Hi, and welcome to today's webinar. My name's Eddie Pratt. I'm the Managing Director of Product Focus. I'm delighted to have Cyril Le Roux as our presenter today. We might run over time a little bit today because there's a lot of content where we'd like to get some great question and answers. So without further ado, over to you, Cyril.
Thank you very much, Eddie. I'm Cyril, Senior Product Consultant at Product Focus, Frenchman in London. I've been in product management trenches for about 20 years now, working on all sorts of companies from scrappy little startups to big corporations. I've been involved with fintech, e-commerce, prop tech, or marketplaces. And some of my proudest moments was launching a banking app, for instance, or turning around the mobile app at Zoopla, which is a property portal in the UK. And these days, well, I'm fortunate enough to be able to work on my own product, but I'm also interested in passing on what I've learned, all the scar tissue, all the bad experience, all the good experiences, passing that on to the next generation. And so I teach product management, I coach, and I also consult on product management. Personal mission: fill the world with better products, one product team at a time. So let's cover what we're going to be talking about. We're going to do a brief intro about Product Focus so that you know who we are. We're going to talk about how you can enrich your products with AI. We're going to talk about how you can use also AI as part of your own practice, and then some guardrails. Now, you might be wondering, is this webinar for me? Well, unless you're an expert who's using ChatGPT every day, who's created your own GPTs and stay on top of that field every day, it is probably for you. It's aimed at people who heard about AI tools, probably used it, but mostly they're wondering whether they're using those tools as fully as they could. So that's who we're aiming that webinar at. So who are we, Product Focus? Well, we're really proud to say that we're the leading product management training organization in Europe. We've been operating since 2006. That's over 18 years. And we deliver mainly two types of courses. There is a course on product management and product marketing for technology-based products. This one is open to everyone. But we also have a leading product management, and we run two types of sessions. These are for people who are more experienced at product management, and we have sessions for people who are currently leading product teams, and we have sessions for people who aspire to lead product teams and want to be ready when the time comes. Both of these trainings, they run over 3 days when done face to face, and we also have a version of it that's done online, and that's 5 big half days. What we can also do is customize our trainings, both of them, for private trainings. And the great thing about this is that it puts everybody in your team on the same page when it comes to best practice. And as a tribute to the excellent quality of the training we deliver, we have a Trustpilot score of 4.8. All right, that's it about the plug. Let's talk about AI. And let's come up with a definition. What's AI? Artificial intelligence. Or you could say it's the opposite of natural stupidity. But that's not particularly helpful, is it? So we could define artificial intelligence as a simulation of human problem-solving capability and intelligence. But it is actually a very broad term, and it encompasses things that you would not necessarily think or classify under AI. For instance, the very complex decision trees called expert systems. Well, that is classed as an AI, early AI kind of system. You have systems that can learn by themselves with minimal input. You may have seen simulations of robots trying to learn how to walk and finding strategies to be able to walk long distances. That's called reinforcement learning. You have AIs that are able to recognize things, be it trends, objects in an image, etc. That is mostly about machine learning, even though machine learning is a broad category that actually encompasses many others, including natural language processing, which is about translating, summarizing, and analyzing the sentiment. So what's the point? Well, the point is that AI covers a wide range of things. And it may not seem like it, but AI has been with us for a long time. The term itself can be traced back to a conference in 1956. But more recently, AI has hit a number of very important milestones. And maybe like me, you've realized in the last 2 years that the hype has really accelerated. Thanks largely to OpenAI releasing a public chat-based model in November 2022. And where AI used to be something that you see in movies and the sort of conversation you could imagine would only be a Hollywood production, now it seems that robots make a lot more sense than many people we know. At least it looks that way. So those models are increasingly capable, especially when we consider how we interact with them. A lot of models today still operate on the premise that they will, if you give it an image, it will analyze the image, it will create a text description of that image, analyze that text, and then respond back, which takes a lot of different steps that take a lot of time. Increasingly, and that's the surprising thing, they're becoming multimodal, meaning they do actually understand the voice, the text, the image, the video directly without having to go through first transcribing into text. And what that does, it makes them a lot faster. And this is largely what happened in a demo you might have seen of OpenAI, where you were able to talk with the model, interrupt it, and they would respond very, very quickly. That's what the models are able to do, and that's increasingly the case. So what we're going to do in the rest of this presentation, we're going to split in two. First, we're going to talk about AI in your product, and we're going to talk about AI for product managers. So where could you use AI in your product? Well, it turns out there's a lot of potential applications, and we've picked 6 verticals, but the principles could be applied many more times. If you have training data that can tell a system that what good looks like and what is different, then you can train an AI. So for instance, at Zoopla, a property portal in the UK, you know, the sort of place you go to find a property to rent or buy. At some point, we played the idea, it was a hackathon actually, we played with the idea of recognizing the building type. You see, estate agents don't upload the type of the building generally, unless it's noteworthy. So they won't tell you that it's a Tudor, Georgian, Victorian for properties in the UK, or postmodern or Art Deco, whatever. But we thought we could actually look at the images and train an AI to recognize this, and that we could enrich the listing with it and also allow people to filter based on that information. Well, we never actually executed because we didn't find a lot of interest from people on this, but it actually worked to a reasonable extent. And that's an example of how you can use existing data and enrich it, or with metadata coming from an AI. And in a similar vein, the NHS in the UK, the National Health Service, is investing 21 million to roll out better lung cancer detection across 64 NHS trusts. And it's just a system that looks at images and is able to more precisely detect whether there are signs of tumors or not. In finance, you also have a number of applications where you can get better credit scoring models or take into consideration more data points to come to financial decisions. And in the industry, we've seen a lot of autonomous little machines, little robots, little vehicles that combine reinforced learning and machine learning and are able to do a lot of things autonomously, like managing a warehouse, for instance. Now, with generative AI, the ability to create more content, it's possible to go even further. And it won't be long before we can see customer services where you are not actually talking to a human, even though it sounds a lot like a human. And only last week, I saw a company advertising the ability to create an avatar that would have your own face. So it's like a little video, and people can ask questions to that avatar and get answers played back to them through the video. Even though you never said those things, the video is trained on you, and it's plugged into a large language model to be able to respond. Whether that's a good idea, and in time will tell, but the capability is there. When you think about this, applications are almost endless where to use AI. The question is more often now, which is going to be cheaper? If you think about your own job, is it cheaper to use a human, or is it going to be cheaper to train an AI to do your job? And if you think that this perhaps feels a little dystopian, well, you're not the only one. The EU is trying to put some safeguards on this, and they've introduced a legislation that goes live tomorrow, August 1st, 2024. And we're going to briefly talk about that legislation because it's important for all product managers if your product is going to be accessible to users in Europe. So it creates different categories of risk, and it has corresponding obligations, starting with things that are unacceptable. So the EU has ruled that it is unacceptable to use AI to do a social scoring, which is the sort of thing that's happening to some extent in China, where it decides whether you're a good citizen based on your behavior, and that can affect your credit scoring in turn. So there's a range of things that are considered unacceptable, and there's just no way you can introduce that in Europe. But then there are a number of other categories that introduce some obligations. So for instance, under high risk, you have AI systems that are used in critical infrastructure. If, for instance, you're using an AI to fly a plane, well, you're going to have to put in place a number of safeguards, as I described here at the bottom of that slide. Under limited risk, you have things like chatbots. So it is legal it's going to be legal in the European Union to have customer service representatives that will essentially be AIs, but you will have to tell the user that they're dealing with an AI, not a human. And then finally, an area that has minimal risk that is not regulated. So these will become gradually enforceable over the next 2 years. Unacceptable risk is going to start in exactly 6 months. Well, almost 2nd of February 2025, and the other is over the next 2 years. So that's for the EU. A number of us are based in the UK. The UK is going to take a slightly different approach. It's still early days as we have a new government, but we know that there will be some legislation. And what seems to be happening is that the UK will take a stance that is halfway between the US, that is fairly relaxed about AI, and the EU, that is fairly strict about AI. They will try to strike something in the middle, and instead of regulating any AI anywhere like the EU does, it will probably start focusing on specific industries, specific areas. But there will be more coming on this. Whether you like it or you hate it, that's not the point. That legislation is going to be put in place, and we need to know about it so that we can stay within the law. So that's about using AI for your product. And what we said is that the field of applications is almost endless. But there will be some rules that you need to abide to. Now let's talk about how can you use AI as part of your own job. Should you believe the hype? Well, I think you should. There's been a number of research papers on this. I just picked one here. And what it suggested is that if you use it right, you can get to the intended result 40% quicker, and it improves quality by 25%. And that is with models that were available in 2023. And those models are now even more capable. So using AI as part of your job gives you a huge advantage over your colleagues who might not be doing it, but there's a good and a bad way of doing it. So first of all, let's try to frame a little bit the sort of things that we could do with AI, and then we'll look at product managers in particular. So what could you use it for? So what sort of things can you use an AI for? Well, I use it a lot to create documents under direction. So the sort of thing I wouldn't do is to say, well, create a PDF, a PRD about this, a product requirement document about this subject, and not give it any further information. But what I do use it a lot for is to create a document, and I will give it the points that it needs to cover. So it will be like using a secretary. I will say, this is the objective of the document. These are the points I want to mention. Create a copy in a business casual tone of voice. I use it all the time also as a product management coach, where with my customer's approval, of course, I record the conversation, transcribe the text, and then provide them with a very sharp, very crisp summary of their questions and my suggestions. And this allows us to get a good summary, even if my answer was actually, it came at different points in the conversation. It groups it all under that particular headline. It's very easy to follow. And I got great feedback from the people I coach on that. And another thing you could use it just to multiply the number of examples, you could use it to train for an exam. If you have an exam coming up about a particular skill, you can upload the spec of the exam, some past papers, and ask the AI to give you questions and rate your answers. That's what my daughter did, for instance, when she was preparing her A-levels earlier this year. So those are random examples, just to give a feel for the sort of thing that we can do. What we're going to do now is think about what product managers do. And I think you'll agree with me that there is an awful lot of things that product managers need to do. For those of you who are familiar with our model, we have this model that we're using called the Product Activities Framework. And it covers all the different things that a product manager has to do during the life of a product. It doesn't mean they have to do that themselves, actually, but these things need to happen. And what we're going to do is we're going to take each of those blocks: insight, analysis, direction, inbound, and outbound, and look at the sort of things you could use an AI for. Now, when we train in our training, we take 3 days to cover each and every one of those boxes. So we're going to go a little bit quicker here. Let's start with insight. So insight here, it's really having a thorough understanding of the domains, domain knowledge. And one of the things that you might want to do here is get a good understanding of your competitors. So let's think about this. The text you see at top left here is a prompt. So I typed this into a window, and you can see that it's going to do a little bit of search. Let's say that our company is manufacturing precision gauges and dials. It wants to expand into general aviation market. So we need to do some research, and I want to know who are the main players. So it's talking about Garmin, Honeywell, and Collins. Notice that I asked it for market share. If it has market share information, it will provide it if that information is available somewhere. It could not really give me a precise market share indication here. But what it could do was tell me that there's an interesting split here between people who buy instruments to retrofit into an existing aircraft versus people who buy to fit in a brand new aircraft. And it's a 60-40 kind of mix. So I find that interesting. Next, we're going to look into understanding more about one of the competitors. I'm less familiar with Collins. I want to know a little bit more about them. And here you can see it didn't do a search. It knew about Collins already. And it says it's a very wide, very comprehensive, very innovative brand that has a great reputation for reliability, has global reach. So it seems to be very high-end. Raytheon is the company that owns that. That explains a lot. So high-end, expensive, and that gives me a few ideas already about how I might want to go about this market. Now, because we talked about retrofit, let's say that for argument's sake, I want to know a little bit more about what that retrofit market is like. What are the main motivations? Not necessarily purely about instruments, but more generally. And here is going to give me a number of drivers. So for instance, sustainability, efficiency are some drivers. There are some technological upgrades, cost. I mean, sometimes it's cheaper to retrofit a new product from a running cost perspective. It could be regulatory, or it could be safety features. So that gives me the main drivers, and now I can start applying this back to my instruments. And going into this, I might want to start spitballing ideas, trying to understand what are other things that I should take into consideration. For instance, what is the growth potential? So here it's going to be probably a little bit more creative and start thinking about how I could go about this. Now, the question is this: will I blindly accept all that information and just copy and paste into a document? Of course not. That would be a very career limiting move. There could be important omissions. It could be information that was made up, like hallucinations. It is a problem. So you need to double check what it does. In other words, it's not replacing what you do, it's accelerating the work. Now, I've suggested here a few prompts to use. What we're doing is, as part of this presentation, we're giving you a full list of prompts. And if you want to do a screenshot, I'd like to draw your attention to 3 of those prompts on the left-hand side, the one in bold there, because they use the LLM a little bit differently. If you ask an LLM for information that it knows about the market, information it knows about your company, then it's relatively safe. But if you want a large language model or an AI to analyze your own document, then you need to be very careful, because even if you tick the boxes that the model cannot be used, the data you provided for to improve and all that, you may still be in breach of your employment contract because you've uploaded information, confidential information potentially, and you've shared that outside the organization. So you need to be very careful with the AI that you use to do that. You need to make sure that your leadership is at least aware, or you're using a company-sanctioned AI. And that's what we see with many organizations at the moment. They're rolling out their own internal LLM to be able to do that sort of thing safely. So don't get in trouble by using an LLM without making sure it is safe from a legal perspective to do so. So that was insight, domain knowledge. Let's talk about product analysis. This is where you start defining the solution. Here as well, it's not about letting the AI think for you, but it's about helping you think. For instance, here, you could ask it to find a niche that appears to be underserved, or bouncing ideas around segmentation. And whatever it comes up with will just be ideas that you need to check. Continuing with proposition, if you use the elevator pitch or the value proposition statement, which is something we teach in our course, it goes a little bit like this. It's a summary of the proposition. It says for, and then you need to mention the customer segment, who, and then you need to express their needs, our product, and then you mention all the benefits. It's a standard phrase to define a proposition. Well, you could use an AI to help you come up with different variants of wording this value proposition. And the reason why you might want to have 3 or more variants is because the AI has to make choices when you're asking it for a statement. And asking for 3 different variants, it allows you to check which ones seem to be working the best. And this is where the LLMs really work well. If English is not your mother tongue, like me, and if, like me, you were never good at copy, be it in French or in English, I've always been terrible at that, then an AI is your friend to do this sort of thing. It builds great material. And of course, the same thing could be said about positioning. This is where the creative angle is interesting, where you can ask for ideas about different ways of positioning your product and what could happen on the other side of that. And let's talk about forecast. You would not take the numbers coming from an LLM and drop it in the spreadsheet. You would need to take probably a bigger pinch of salt that you would normally do. But if you're using a technique, which is also one that we talk about in the course, that is TAM, SAM, SUM. I don't know if you heard that before, but it's a total addressable market, serviceable addressable market, and serviceable obtainable market. Essentially, it's like a funnel. If you're a fisherman, it would be total addressable market will be about all the fish in the sea. Serviceable addressable market will be about the fish that is in the area of the sea that you're going to go fishing in, and some is what you can reasonably expect to catch with your net and your crew. Well, you see, going from one number to the other, you need to apply a percentage, and this is where an AI could be interesting. It could give you different rationales for applying to apply to go from one to the other, and explain how it got to that number. It's just a way of bouncing more ideas. So if you're taking screenshots, this is the one you want. Moving on now to product direction. So direction is about strategy, about pricing. And here I picked the example of doing a SWOT. Now, everyone pretty much has done a SWOT at some point. And if you haven't done one is coming, you can be sure. And this is an example where an LLM, a large language model, or an AI, is not very likely to provide a much better answer than what you would be able to do. But if you were to do a SWOT and you wanted to be able to have something robust that you can present in front of executives, then you would probably take 3 colleagues with you and spend 30 minutes to an hour. If you think about the company time that's been burnt through that exercise, about 4 hours. If you use an LLM, and the LLM knows about your company because it's big enough, you can get a first draft under 10 seconds. And you can then use that draft to kickstart the exercise, and where you would have spent maybe an hour, the 4 of you, then you can reduce it to 15 minutes, and that makes it a lot quicker. Now, every once in a while, it may also come up with ideas that you hadn't thought of, and that's the value of testing that under an AI as well. When it comes to creating a vision, this is something I've seen a lot of product teams struggle. They don't really have a good vision for their product. And vision is super important because that's what drives the strategy. If you don't know where you're going, how you get there doesn't really matter. So you need a good vision. And I've actually used this prompt, or small variation of it, with a team of executives who wanted to come up with a new vision. So it was a workshop. They needed a vision for one of their products. And what we did was simply started explaining, capturing how is their product going to make the world a better place? How is it helping customers? All the good things about the product. We had this in a fairly unstructured format. And then at the end, I asked the AI to create 5 ambitious product vision variants on this. Why 5? Well, same reason as earlier, because it will make choices. So asking for 5 allows you to see what trade-offs did it do, and perhaps do slightly different trade-offs. So I was in that room. I was remote. There was 7 or 8 on the other side. I was sharing my screen. Press enter at the end of the prompt. Then we looked at the results together. There was a silence for about 10 seconds. And then I heard one of them saying, I really, really like number 4. And then another one after that said, yes. And if we could just change the last bit with the statement on number 5, I think we've got the perfect thing. And that's how, we went from spending 3 hours, which would normally be the tariff to come up with a product vision with execs, down to 45 minutes. And it removes a lot of the little tedious wordsmithing to make sure we capture the right concept. That goes a lot quicker. So strongly recommend that one. It really was helpful. When it comes to, in a scenario where you need to create a prioritization based on customer feedback, which, by the way, could be in multiple languages, and you also need to take into account market trends and business goals, well, it can be a little bit tedious to do that. And this is where, again, an LLM can help you think through this, where you can create, for instance, you can start with extracting the theme, so it will translate all the feedback into English, then extract the themes, then combine it with business goals and market trends, and suggest an order with a rationale. And that's what you want. You want the rationale that comes with it, so that you can explain it. And you would not take that content and use it directly, but it's good as a sounding board to be able to do a first draft of it. And then, can you use AI to do pricing? Well, you can probably not in the same way use it directly, but it can give you interesting ideas about different ways of pricing your product. So this is about opening the range of possibilities and having, you know, as much as possible from a creative perspective. Okay, so that's the screenshot for those of you who want it. But as I said, we'll have the PDF at the end. Let's talk about inbound now. So if the 3 previous modules were about building the right thing, inbound is about building the thing right. It involves a little bit of discovery because you will still have to ensure that the features that you're thinking about will hit the mark. And this is something where, again, an AI is very useful. And I'm talking from experience here. In the course that we give about product management, we talk about different techniques like the MOM test, outcome-driven innovation, that's what ODI stands for, or CANO. And this often required coming up with surveys and questionnaires and interview guides. Well, an AI is great at creating interview guides, creating surveys, much quicker than you would normally. And the good thing is that even if you already have a survey, you can still use it by asking it to check for perhaps unintended biases or clarifying the language. Sorry. Moving into requirements, my experience is that it's surprisingly good at creating tickets and acceptance criteria. Again, don't copy and paste. You still need to use your brain as part of this, but it's a fairly repetitive and tedious task to break down all the different features into tickets. So, you know, it could be a good draft, a good starting point to ask an AI to break it down based on the spec that you've got. And especially when you have, if you do Gherkin style acceptance criteria given when then, it can be a fairly long list of things. And the AI will think of a number of scenarios. Every time I've done, I was surprised about the sort of things that it thought about that I was going to come to, but it was actually ahead of me. So it saved me a lot of time there. Now, this is a little bit different. Creating wireframes is not the sort of thing that right now you can get out of the typical chat-based AIs. But there are a number of companies, Figma included, that have started rolling out tools that allow you to create a screen based on a prompt. And it's particularly good for things that are fairly standard, like a product page, my account. So if you ask for a product page for for instance, a company selling shoes, an e-commerce selling shoes, or a my account for a financial organization, it is able to do that. And this is rapidly moving at the moment. Right now, it's not particularly good at taking into account brand guidelines, but it is something that they're targeting, and they will be able to do more in the future. And then finally, if you need to create material, training material for operations, for instance, and you already have a lot of material, a lot of like a manual, then this is something that an AI is particularly comfortable at, is taking the content and logically structuring a presentation. It won't create the PowerPoint, but it will give you the content that each slide can have. I mean, it won't create the PowerPoint yet. This is again coming. So that's the summary for inbound if you're taking screenshots. The last thing we're going to talk about, if you have inbound, then obviously you have outbound. Inbound is about building it right. Outbound is about making it famous. And here I'll move quickly through those, but it's about using the AI to think more extensively about the sort of things you should take into account, like creating a checklist. Coming up with creative content is something that works really well. If you have a document that explains, some competitive analysis that compares your product to the competitors, then you can do battle cards. Battle cards will be a tool that you can give your sales team to position your product and defend your product against the competition. And similarly, if you do any kind of sales enablement, in creating a sales playbook, that's the sort of thing that an AI can help. So the summary for outbound, the prompt library for all the outbound activities is this. Let's finish up with how to interact with an AI and how things are evolving. Well, this is changing. Right now, the main way of dealing with an AI is to go into a window or an app, and then you're going to start a conversation. And in that conversation, you can upload documents, you can upload audios, videos, images, and this will be part of the context. So anything you ask further down in that conversation will refer to what you've already said in that particular conversation. So you could have a conversation about a new feature, for instance, while having a separate conversation about, say, a go-to-market activity. The problem is they don't know about each other. So whatever you uploaded in the GTM, the go-to-market chat, is not known of the chat that is doing at the moment the feature development. So you need to be able to come up with a very robust prompt to make sure you've got all the information. And we have that little list that you might want to consider on how to build a prompt. It's about clarity, but it's about also context, stating the goal, the outcome, being as unambiguous as possible. And because LLMs are very good at guessing the next word, they don't always think ahead that much. So if you break down the task into steps, you often get a much richer result. That's the chain of thought kind of approach. You can give it example, and if you don't want it to sound like somebody completely different to who you are, you can give it a sample of your own writing and ask it to match your style. And if you ask the AI, you allow it to ask questions by simply saying, ask me any question you need. It will also give you or ask you for things that it's missing. Now, in the more complex cases, and this is a bit meta, you can ask the AI to create the prompt that the AI will respond to. And I'm going to just give you an example of a prompt that was created using the AI. And first I said, I need you to help me create a prompt about this. And this is about finding more about a company that I really admire, Cirrus aircraft, beautiful aircraft. And I was very impressed with what came out of that prompt. And so I asked, create the prompt, and I said, execute the prompt. And it came up with all this. And that works really well. Now, beware, there's a little warning at the bottom here. An AI will not always respond the same way to a prompt. And this is an experiment I'm encouraging you to try. Ask it 4 or 5 times in different conversations the same thing and see what it comes up with. And you will see there's an element of randomness. So you just need to bear that in mind. And it's part of the way the model works. But this is why you need to check the information that it's providing you with. As I said, this is changing. Right now, the main way of interacting with an AI is through different conversations in an app. And that's why you need a good prompt. But this is changing because increasingly, the AI tools are going to be included into the computer operating system. This is happening as we speak right now. And this is making a big difference because if the AI already knows about your emails, it already knows about your Jira tickets, if it already knows about all the information that you have in your drive, well, it knows about your context. So you won't have to give it as much detail as you would normally. So that's a major advantage. Another advantage is that if it's running in the operating system, it actually probably can automate a number of tasks. Like, for instance, if you receive an email from a stakeholder, increasingly it will be possible for the AI to have a shot at it. What would you respond? And then let you validate or correct based on what it created. And you will have in context options to be able to summarize, create, or extend, as you can see in the screenshots here. And one more thing, it will also probably be a little bit safer because a number of those tasks will be able to run within the operating system without uploading anything and talking to another model. Running locally makes it safer. So let's finish with a few guardrails to observe. I'm not going to go into the details of this for in the interest of time. But the thing to bear in mind is that using an AI safely in your product or as part of your practice is on you. Apart from legal, it's unlikely that many people will have an interest in this for now. That is until something goes wrong. You see, the level of evolution that we have with AI right now is on par with businesses starting to use computers in the 70s and the internet starting to become a thing in the 90s. And we went through the phases of, I don't need that internet thing, to, oh, it's actually useful for home, to, I couldn't work without it. But what we've seen for each of those two revolutions is how much damage it can create as well if it's used wrong. So you need to think about the safety, the security, the ethics of it all. From a compliance perspective, just to quote to mention an example, intellectual property, you're at risk potentially of losing it if you feed an AI with your intellectual property so that it can interact with people. Well, AIs right now don't deal well with user rights. It doesn't know who it's allowed to say things to and not. And so, it might blurt out things that it shouldn't. So we need to be very careful with that. But also, if you're using an AI to create content on the basis of another content, like for instance, you create a short film in the style of Wes Anderson, for instance. Well, you've been inspired, how much is that intellectual property yours? You really need to think about this, and this is going to be a bit of a minefield. So for those of you who will download the PDF, we have a few suggestions here on ethics, data management, accountability, thinking about your third-party vendors as well, and treating them the same way as you would within a GDPR context. How safe is their infrastructure? So, quick checklist. If you're using AI to enhance your productivity, make sure you don't leak information unintentionally. So only use company-sanctioned AIs. Double check the facts. AI are very good at convincing you of facts that they've completely made up. It's one of the major problems we have with AIs at the moment. It's reducing in frequency and magnitude, but it's still there. So you need to check the facts, and sometimes even get a second opinion from another AI, and make sure you stay in control. You need to be able to defend and explain the content that was created and the recommendation that you came up with. So where does that leave us? Well, having access to an AI doesn't in itself make you a product manager. You need to recognize what good looks like, meaning you need to know the fundamentals. And that's where we come in as a training organization. We're helping people become more familiar with all the different techniques you can have in the different aspects of product management. So that's it. Let's I'll just briefly mention that we have a lot of content for product managers to recognize what good looks like. We have, if you sign up to our resources, and we'd love to help to do some private trainings or public training, whether it's product management or leading product teams. So it's time for the Q&A.
Actually, there was one a little bit earlier, Cyril, which I think was very prudent from Gabriella, about how can you control the quality of the AI output when you're not familiar with the topic that you're working on. So I think this talks to your point about you need to know product management. So yes. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So you essentially you need to treat it like an intern with an IQ of 250, and that means it can be very, very convincing. Using different models can be a good way of trying to see what is the range of answers that you're getting. So let's just mention a few, right? You have Mistral 2, you have ChatGPT, currently 4.0, you have some will give you access to Llama 3.1. Claude is another option from Anthropic. We're not recommending a model in particular here. You have to try them out to see what works for you. But if you ask different models, you can see the range of answers that it's giving you, and it's likely that the answers that come that are in common are probably the safest one, but there's no substitute to knowing the subject, unfortunately, which is good for us because that's what we're training people on, right?
And that's good, Cyril. You've actually partly answered the next question is, why have you selected ChatGPT as the large language model, and what other decent options are available for product managers?
Okay. So ChatGPT 4.0 generally recognized as one of the leaders at the moment. So, I've got a paid subscription for ChatGPT 4.0. I've also got a paid subscription to Claude, which I've found particularly useful. But it's often a case of, based on what I'm doing, I will try both models, these two at least, and see which one is providing the best kind of answers. And I found that, for instance, for translation work, Claude was better than ChatGPT, even though benchmarks disagreed. My own interpretation was that it was better. You have a French company called Mistral that does a nice model as well. I quite like Perplexity when it comes to research. Perplexity is following the approach of academics that you can't state something unless you have a way of proving it. So it reduces significantly the hallucinations, and it is a model that I like to do research, particularly. I've also got Llama 3.1 running on my laptop. I've got a small model running locally on my laptop, where I know the information will not leak because it's internal, and there are others. The truth is, it's moving so quickly that what is good one week might not be as good the following week. So what I tend to do is I benchmark on a regular basis different AIs on a specific task to see which one is giving me the best results. I don't just use one.
So, Cyril, there's a question about, I'm not sure I like the term a legacy product manager versus an AI product manager, but I think we have to be subtle with the definition of AI product manager, because I think that's relating to someone who's working on AI products. Yeah. But I don't know if you have a view on that.
So relating to, the AI-powered product manager, perhaps, right? Where you're using AI as part of your practice. Well, I think, you could go back, if you dial back, say, 30 years, and somebody is telling you what's the difference between a product manager using the internet and a product manager who doesn't, or if you dial back even further to the late 70s, what's the difference between a product manager using a personal computer to one that is just using normal documents? It's going to be the same sort of thing. I think AI is a massive productivity boost. It increases the range of the quality that you're getting, and I don't think there's an option, if I'm being completely honest, for a product manager not to use AI right now. You need to use it safely. Did I answer the question right? Was that the?
I think so. We'll see, but we'll go on to a next one, Cyril. So Mark is really enjoying things there and has given us some ideas. Let me have a look here. Thanks for the insights there. Michael's asking about organizational readiness on the AI Act. I don't think that we could possibly speak to that.
I would be very surprised if this time we've learned our lesson with GDPR and we do things well in advance. And it's not going to be a mad rush in the last few months before the legislation comes in. I'm pretty sure it's going to be the same. So, those government-imposed deadlines are there for a reason, and there will be a mad rush. So, in 2 years, in say a year's time, you could start a business as a consultant helping companies complete their readiness for an AI EU Act, and you will be very busy. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, some more here. One more thing.
One thing is white on white.
Yeah, how to convince management and also other employees to go for AI. There seems to be a lot of resistance. And any words of wisdom there, Cyril?
My experience, when I'm training and when I'm coaching, I've often been in that situation where people looked at AI in a very suspicious way and didn't really trust it or worried. And I found the best ways to actually give them a simple exercise to complete on AI, and get them to experience it firsthand in a setting that feels like business, but is not necessarily pure business, and or purely related to what the company is doing, so that there's no risk of leak. But getting them to experience it for themselves is, especially around the creative side of things, that tends to work well. So summarizing, I mean, if you need to summarize and extract the themes of the result of an NPS, say you have an NPS, not Net Promoter Score, that allows people to leave a comment, and you want to analyze this, and it's multilingual, well, that's a dream task for an LLM. It does that very, very well. It could you be used as an interesting use case to convince people, for instance, if you have that.
So, Cyril, I think we could go on for hours here with more questions, but I think we've ran out of time. What I will say to you is, thank you so much, Cyril. You've done a fantastic job there. Really interesting to see how AI can be used to enhance your product and also to enhance your productivity as a product manager. What I'd like to do is encourage everybody in the call is, if you can email us at ai@productfocus.com. We'd love to hear, what aspect of AI do you need help with regarding product management? What are the questions you have? What are you struggling with? If you're interested in further information, or perhaps a short course on AI as we develop it, we'd love to hear from you there. If you'd like to perhaps be a beta tester or be spoken to about that, please email us at ai@productfocus.com. And if you have any deep experiences with AI, either for productivity or building it into products, and you'd like to participate perhaps in a future discussion or roundtable event on AI, we'd definitely like to hear you. So, email us at ai@productfocus.com. Any thoughts about AI at all, and any of those areas? And I'd just like to thank you for your support and your time, investing time to listen to us today. And we'd love you to join us in a future webinar. So thank you very much. And thank you very much, Cyril. Great job. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Okay. Goodbye. Bye-bye.